right. I can't tell. I don't think we're live yet. I don't know if we're live yet.
On what, Facebook?
I couldn't find it.
It's it'll be in the group now.
Oh, it will be? Not on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
It normally sends me a
It just popped up for me. You look so dumb with our Trump hats on.
Okay, so it's up.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Enough texting girls. We gotta get to work. Your program will begin in 30 seconds. All right.
All right, let's get back to some boring subjects.
Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. My name is Chris Spangle, and you're listening to episode 309 on August 23rd, 2018. We've got a potpourri of topics. We've got the old sharpshooter Tad Western here. We've got Chris Gault, one of the OGs. They're both wearing their Make America Great Again hats for whatever reason. We'll find out why here in just one moment.
Warning. This show is for adults, produced by semi-adults. So the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians, where our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. We examine current events from a libertarian perspective while treating modern politics with all of the irreverence it deserves.
There has been lie after lie.
We toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, a 15-year veteran of politics and media, Chris Spangle.
All right, welcome to the program tonight. It's going to be a fun one. Rob Kendall was supposed to be here, but he has a sick lady, so he had to take care of his wife, so he wasn't able to get parole. Tad.
Oh, damn it. I was hoping to see Rob to wish him and Bruce a happy birthday, because it's Bruce's birthday this week.
It is Bruce's birthday, and also here's Chris Gault. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great, Spangle. How are you?
I'm so glad. Now, what the hell are you two wearing?
Head warmers.
Head warmers. Now, so I bought for a comedy skit that I was doing, a guy named Larry, mocking a Trump supporter back in the day. Oh my God. So, anyways,
I was ready to mosh.
how do you like the new intro?
I love it. Yeah, not too bad. It got a little annoying there. Not bad for about 10 seconds.
I've only gotten one complaint so far, but I have gotten a complaint. So we have a survey which you can take.
You want it to be folk music?
It's at the bottom of wearelibertarians.com, and somebody's like, "Yeah, I don't like the new intro." It's like not really any different.
It wouldn't be a libertarian podcast without at least one complaint.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So
you got a heavy metal intro, get a rap intro going, get a country intro, and then mix it up every other episode.
Well,
so then people don't know what's coming.
The theory is that if you look at the stats now, you see most people are listening for the first minute, and they tune in to see what you're going to talk about, and then if they aren't interested, they bounce. If they are,
sure,
they stick around. And so I wanted to change it up and grab people out right away with little Ron Paul, little Trump, little current events, and then, the intro, and then you repeat essentially what you want people to remember about the show. You're telling them every time, like, hey, this is not screaming heads, this is conversation. So that's the point of it. But
yeah, it does a good job.
Right. So we're trying to just make it as new people. We have hit a new milestone. We have 10,000 downloads on an episode that was released a month ago.
Yeah.
So
that was a good episode.
Thanks. Which one was it?
I think it was the one I was on. You got the Tad Western bump.
So
Tad and I are kind of standing together right now with these hats on.
Yeah,
it's because sometimes you don't always agree with what people say.
Right.
You say that a lot.
Right.
But the key is you got to stand up with the dissent. Especially when they're getting bullied on by the government.
So you're wearing a Keep America Great hat.
Because Infowars.com stands for freedom of speech.
And then Tad, I just was like, here's my red. I have a red Make America Great Again hat.
Yeah, I walked in the door and this was forced upon me, so
Yeah.
you have to wear it. And I said, I have a really tiny head.
Well, I wore this for Rob, but Rob didn't come. So.
Yeah.
I knew Rob wore his last time I was on, so.
I don't think he's been here. Rob Kendall is our favorite Trump supporter. He interviewed Trump, which aired in the We Are Libertarians feed if you go back and listen to it, but I don't think he's been here since 2016. He and I had a disagreement. Gault, as you know, I fight with friends a lot, and
it was my first episode back after a long time and it was with Rob,
and it was about immigration,
and it was a long time ago now.
And it got heated.
It did,
yeah,
and who's right? Molly would still be alive. Rob's wall would be.
Wow.
All right, so here's the thing about these two characters. I always enjoy talking about conspiracies, and the three of us are Alex Jones fans. I don't think because of the conspiracy theory stuff, but mainly because he's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
We were watching Alex before the show started. It was insanely funny.
We were just laughing.
It's
at
great
everything.
entertainment.
Oh yeah, he's the best salesman.
He did something today on the show where he was making fun of Brian Stelter, and so they put up a picture of Brian Stelter from CNN talking, and it was basically, I don't like Alex Jones to be banned. I want him to be able to play. It was and like as they went to commercial, you could hear him crack himself up. And so, like, do you guys think that the court document about him being basically a character actor?
Yeah.
Do you think he believes actually what he says?
I think he does to an extent. I think he probably used that as a law excuse so he could keep his kids, because I think his wife was arguing that he was saying that he was going on all these other podcasts. I think she even cited when he went on Joe Rogan that he smokes weed and he does all this shit. So then he's like says all this crazy stuff, and then I think he just used like, well, I'm pretty much a character at this point, characterization of what he used to be.
Yeah.
You know?
It starts out with what you believe, because
but who am I to talk about characters?
I do sales, kind of like Alex.
Right.
And I work for the company that has the greatest internet in the whole country. But I used to work for their competitor.
Apparently not AT&T, according to my experience.
I used to work for their competitor, who you may have just named, and I used to have to act like they had the best internet in the world.
Right.
And now, I did believe in their product for a little while, but you have to take that belief and you have to exacerbate it. And that's what Alex Jones does. He believes what he's saying, but then he extremely makes it a show. And that's his thing. That's how he sells it. So
he's got an angle like any other broadcaster does.
That's right. Yeah, I pretend to be friendly.
But you have an agenda.
Of course I have an agenda.
And so does Alex Jones.
I am here to inform the people of libertarianism. I talk about current events because current events is what hooks people. That's what they come and they want to hear about. They want to hear what is happening in the news. And then I slip the libertarianism in on you. I make your drink.
Make sure they're 18 years old before you go slipping anything.
Okay.
Your real agenda is once the libertarians take the White House, you want to be press secretary.
That's right. I just want the bump that Alex.
Set yourself up.
I want the bump that Alex got when Bill Weld is president in 2020.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Oh God.
Speaking of Jones, I did the Chris Spangle show. Which, if you haven't listened, great show, greatest host, no better host in the entire world, fantastic.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's me talking into a microphone once a day, giving you just 20 minutes, 30 minutes of news, and so you can spend your drive to or from work with me. I'll post it by about 9 every night, and so today I broke down Ron Wyden talking, Senator Ron Wyden, who is good and bad, really good on like issues of privacy or whatever. But really garbage on this freedom of speech stuff. Yeah. So if you're on a podcast, either one of you, let's say you're on a podcast and you're asked...
This is a hypothetical question. Right?
Let's hear the question.
We're not being asked it right now on a podcast.
I break the whole thing down, and so you can hear the whole thing on the Chris Spangle Show, Episode 6. I'll put it in the show notes. But go check that out. Please subscribe. Please download. Please clap. And that's your daily dose of We Are Libertarians. Some of you, the greatest compliment to me is like when you look at this survey, which you can fill out at the bottom of wearelibertarians.com, and in the dislikes, the most common dislike was, I wish there were more. Like, that is very, very nice. But the senators on this tech podcast called Recode Decode with Kara Swisher, who is a longtime Silicon Valley tech person, and she asks the following question, and then I'm going to ask the boys, like, what would your answer if you were a senator for the United States government? What would you say?
Zuckerberg's been on Capitol Hill. I want to get into your assessment of how that went in a minute, but let's talk about the Alex Jones thing in more detail, because everyone's had initially they were very much against doing anything about it. I had a podcast with Mark Zuckerberg where he talked about allowing this stuff to go on, and then they made a switch, removing Alex Jones from the platform. So did Google, so did around YouTube, so did others. Twitter has held firm. Talk to me about the difficulties of dealing with stuff like that, because there's First Amendment issues, and then there's freedom from consequence of what you say, too.
How would you answer that question, Tad Western?
If I'm the senator?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, are you talking about just the issue in general with Alex Jones, or are we talking about
that specific question? How would you deal with free speech issues versus consequences of speech? Senator Tad
Well,
Western.
we already have laws dedicated to consequences of speech if something happens.
Right.
So, just because you're on the internet, what the hell is that any different than any other thing? Now, I understand private companies can have their terms of service or whatever. My issue with it is when you keep changing your terms of service or don't even cite what exactly was said to break those terms of service, or something's taken out of context and edited, then that's not I don't know. You can still ban people if you want, but what? It doesn't make any damn sense to me.
Right. Senator Chris Gault.
Oh, I'm going to be the press real quick. That's
Okay.
the headline for tomorrow. Senator Tad Western curses while he defends Alex Jones on national TV.
How do you think I got here, damn it?
I didn't even notice.
He cursed twice.
I didn't even notice.
Listen,
Fake news.
all those companies are private companies, and they make their own decisions. We will always stand up for our American citizens and their freedom of speech, but they don't have a right to use those platforms.
Right.
They can make their own platforms, and I encourage Alex Jones to do so.
Senator Chris Spangle would respond to the question with, this is a matter of free speech. This is a matter of political speech. And even though Alex Jones says things that are gross, that I vehemently disagree with, I firmly support a person's right to speak about politics in any way, shape, or form. There are consequences if you lie about someone, if you try to commit fraud, if you slander or libel someone. Then there are existing laws that can, be a redress of those for those consequences. But at the end of the day, I, as a United States Senator, have absolutely no ability to regulate what this man says or does not says on whatever platform he says it. It's up to those companies to police it, and I don't see that this is an issue for the federal government. And furthermore, I'd also like to add that I just find this busybodiness of us always needing a solution and looking to the government to make this solution up for people is inappropriate. And I would encourage my colleagues across the aisle to chill out and stop lying and making up conspiracy theories. Let's see what Senator Ron Wyden says.
Well, I think what the Alex Jones case shows...
Is he drunk?
He's old and white and from Oregon.
So he's high.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to really be looking at what the consequences are for just leaving common decency in the dust. Mm-hmm. I mean, that to me, and I'll have some more to say about it. As you know, I'm working on a privacy bill.
Mm-hmm. Elmer Fudd. Common decency. How would you define common decency, Tad?
I have zero decency, let alone common decency. So I don't know what that means, if that's a legal term or if it can even be regulated. So I have no idea what he's talking about. He doesn't want to make a headline like I've made.
What about you, Gault? What does common decency mean to you?
You wear a shirt, you wear some shoes, and you don't steal. You pay for the food.
He never really.
I don't think you can define it.
Right, you can't. It's like hate speech.
Yeah, exactly. It's just some
It's arbitrary.
It's blanket term of bullshit. It means nothing.
So it's just like the FCC and the radio industry in the 90s. Common decency was used to regulate radio shows and censor people like Howard Stern, and it's a violation of free speech. The Federal Communications Commission has no reasonable mandate to censor what is a community standard on any radio station.
I think that the heart of it has got to be citizens, controlling their private data. I think there's got to be real transparency. There's got to be consequences for misusing someone's data. But this goes right to the heart of the real value of Section 230. And I guess if people want to say, we ought to just have the government start dictating. And by the way, one of the most stunning aspects of the last couple of
he basically is like, because all these companies are going, why are we the arbiters of what is appropriate? If you're gonna call us to Congress and kick our ass over what is said on our platform, then you figure out. Stop making us the bad guys and losing value in our shares.
Well, there's also the other side of that coin is these aren't just United States companies. They're global companies,
right.
And they've been making special platforms for China or wherever, India, the EU, where they actually are cracking down on what they consider hate speech. You can't post stories about
their government,
anything negative about certain classes or whatever, anything they deem. Well, hell, you can't have a butter knife in England. It's considered a deadly weapon. But my thing is, like, at what point do they... So at some point, these companies are going to start implementing the easiest route. And I think it's probably going to be the censorship route.
Right.
Just to appease a larger market, like China.
We make the argument, and it's their property, they can do what they want, but they're giving into pressure from the federal government because the government is using force. And they always talk about monopolies. These companies are not monopolies. I take a piece of content, and right now, this piece of content that you are hearing is being published to a podcast feed on 4 or 5 different platforms. Video streaming to probably 6 different platforms. The spoken word version of it will be posted on a website, on multiple websites. So the reality is that the idea that these are monopolies and we should break them up and regulate them doesn't hold water, and it's a stupid thing to repeat because you're just making the argument that we should regulate them.
And my main issue with that is it's not even that it's the monopoly standpoint of it just because it's, Facebook or whatever, but the fact that these companies can actually be tyrants against freedom of speech, which freedom of speech isn't granted to you by the government. It's a idea. It's
you have it.
Yeah, you have it,
and the First Amendment says they can't take it from you
because in the past it's been governments who've been the tyrants who have cracked down on it.
Right.
And I mean, we're pretty much into uncharted territories at this point.
Right.
There is one monopoly.
Who's that?
The government. The government is the
right.
monopoly, and that's what we need to be tearing down. The government's the monopoly of force that's forcing all these companies to do this.
Right. And we've been hypercritical of these companies and their censorship of conservatives, but I think I was wrong in saying that late last year. I think the reality is that we need to keep our eyes on the enemy and keep our battle rifles by our bed. Because the reality is that we have to speak up in defense of these companies and their right to do whatever they want to do with their property, while making sure that as consumers they don't censor people like us. This is an issue between us and them, and it is not an issue for the government. It's like when I shadowed a cop once in high school because I wanted to be a police officer, and so we showed up to a domestic dispute. Yeah, and so we showed up to this domestic dispute, and they said, I'm not going in until we get 2 more officers here, because the second they may be wanting to kill each other, but the second I put my hands on him to restrain him, she loses her mind. And that's how we need to be. We need to be a crazy ex-girlfriend who is sitting here going, you touch them and you're going to get us. And I think we need to put pressure on our congresspeople and say we don't want regulation of these platforms in any way, shape, or form. The entire thing of the Russian narrative is just BS. It's totally made up at this point. And it's just a process. They're looking at charging Donald Trump Jr. with perjury sooner rather than later. And that's always been the entire pretense. The entire thing was just to get their hands into Donald Trump's personal world.
Cast the net, baby.
That's right. And as you said, get into the Trump organization.
Oh, yeah, that's where we were talking earlier about how this Cohen is going to lead down to the Trump organization, because if you read the Cohen indictment and everything he pled guilty to, it was pretty much he was reimbursed by the Trump organization, and then Donald and Eric were President Trump had stepped down by the time that the payments had went through. So pretty much it's just leading to him.
Yeah, and so I think you're going to see the Trump organization and Donald Trump himself, I think, are corrupt people. And I think you're going to...
I don't...
As David K. Johnston has reported, the reality is that Donald Trump has a lot of shady business dealings, and he has probably laundered money, Russian money specifically, and that's why he's so eager to not talk about the Russians, is that what Russians do is they use offshore accounts to invest in New York real estate, and that's why it's so high. And so he probably has colluded with the Russians to steal money and not pay taxes and to have these shady business deals going on. And that's what's going to bring him down. Or he's going to step down to protect one of his kids. It won't be Eric, that's for sure. But if they get Ivanka, then he's definitely stepping down. But that's the whole point.
I heard they're coming after Barron next.
And I don't know that it's necessarily a situation where people were meeting in a Washington, D.C., basement of a pizza shop or anything and talking about how to bring down President Trump. I think it's events build on each other, and then you get to a certain place. But talk about undermining the will of the people. The chilling effect that I had after Donald Trump said he wouldn't accept the peaceful transfer of power to Hillary Clinton, that undermined the very underpinnings of this country. And that's ultimately what the Democrats have done. Mm-hmm. And as grotesque as Donald Trump is, it is shocking to see this narrative continue when there's very clearly, after 3 years of investigation, no collusion. And now it's starting to creep into Democrats using it to their advantage and the media cheering them on and encouraging it to steal our ability to speak freely on the internet.
They demonized him for it.
Right.
For saying that.
Right.
Like, why all the hypocrisy?
They don't see it. They don't see it as hypocrisy.
Because they turned around and did exactly what they demonized him for.
Right. Let's continue with Senator Ron Wyden and his questions about stealing your rights.
Days is to see conservative politicians, people like Kevin McCarthy and Ted Cruz. They are essentially saying that the government should run private companies. The government should dictate to private companies what they're doing. I'm sure it's very popular with their base, but doesn't happen to be the right thing. And I think there is a much better model that was bipartisan that really relates to what I call rights and responsibilities.
Right.
That was what
So
Section 230
what rights do you think they should have now? How do you assess their reaction to, just let's use Alex Jones as the example, how do you assess their reactions to him and the changing nature? I do think at some point Twitter is going to throw him off the platform. My guess is they're preparing that. But
I've been...
All right, so Senator Tad Western. Talk about leading. You're in this interview, and I'm talking to Senator Tad Western, and I say, but how do you assess the reaction of these platforms? And the implication in her voice is, have they really done enough?
They need to go further. They need to completely ban everything that he's ever done off the internet.
Remove his credit card processors, end his URL abilities. Let's end his hosting. Let's make sure that he doesn't get power to his offices.
Let's ban his access to bank accounts.
Right.
Shut off his power.
Right.
Anything common carrier-wise.
Right.
Shut it down.
The post office is no longer delivering to him. So, Senator Western, what has been your reaction to how these companies have handled Alex Jones?
My reaction would be they can do whatever they want, but he is broadcasting from his own. He's got his own television station, his own satellites, his own podcast, whatever. He puts it up. I don't understand how, if they are protected under law by anything that he says, because he is the content creator, they're just the platform.
Right.
They can't be sued for anything that he says.
Right. Section 230 says that they're a conduit. They're like...
Absolutely.
It's like me calling Chris Gault and the phone company breaking in and saying, you said something offensive, we're going to end your service with AT&T.
But they did that with the radio.
Right. Well,
No, yeah.
And that's what they tried to say he was, because he was broadcasting on the radio.
the
for
pirate
a
radio
while.
station in Austin was really shut down for being a pirate radio station. But Alex
Yeah,
Jones,
they were broadcasting Alex Jones.
Yeah.
It wasn't him. His
Yeah.
radio station. That's what they. That's what
Yeah,
they.
But
so
that's
Jones says that he was never. It's not his flagship station. Which, what flagship station means is that's your home base, and like you have to have good relations with that station because you want, if your local station isn't doing well, then why would another station buy your product? And so when they report that his flagship station got down, it's a signal to other radio stations that carry his show that they may be next. But the reality is Alex Jones doesn't work with these people. He says,
And as a libertarian, I want more pirate radio stations.
that's right. He says we just give them the feed and they carried it. They're not our flagship station.
Yeah, all of his feeds are actually free to air, and you can run commercials over them.
Right.
If you know anything about Alex Jones.
But
Right.
we've been to this position before where speech was completely free and anybody could listen to it, broadcast, and then we regulated it.
Right.
And now we're getting to that same point again where speech is free, anyone can say whatever they want, and now
Well, isn't that the problem though? The problem is that Alex Jones gets way more viewers than
Yeah.
CNN. The problem is that Mark Dice made a video as I was listening, about how he gets 3,000 likes on a tweet, but then Chris Cuomo gets 100. And
I think that's the issue why they're pushing the narrative so much is because they realize they are a dying platform
losing.
and nobody's watching TV, nobody's reading newspapers.
right.
And this guy, because he's built up an audience over the last 20 whatever years, however long he's been on the radio forever.
Right.
And he's built his loyal audience through being Alex Jones. I mean, you tune into Alex Jones to hear kind of like what Art Bell did with Coast to Coast and everything else,
Right.
It's a show, and he talks politics. He speaks his mind, and it resonates with people.
Yeah.
But now, since they feel that he's the big, as they say, the tip of the iceberg or something,
Yeah,
of
he's
some
the-
hate broadcasting,
the man
beta.
on the mountain.
yeah, they gotta shut him down, and you can't even talk about him.
So, Senator Gault, what is your opinion of how these companies have handled Alex Jones and other conservative and libertarian voices?
Well, I just
I
think
love the face that you make. You get very serious when you're doing this. Look at his face. He got very senatorial. You'll have to go watch the YouTube version of this.
Well, I just find it disgraceful, Spangle. I really do.
That they didn't act fast enough.
No, that they've done anything at all.
Cut the feed.
Cut the feed.
Don't let him talk anymore.
Fire him.
Social media used to be the bastion of free speech. It used to be the place where you could go and say the most ignorant, stupid stuff you wanted, and you'd scroll through it all, and you'd ignore it. Whatever. That's how it was. That's how it should be.
Right.
It shouldn't be the first 10 things I see are all handpicked by Facebook curators.
No, and that's what's going to
And
happen.
that's the only way to solve the problem. If the problem with
Right.
quotes that they see, that's the only way. That's the only solution that would actually work.
What they will do
if
is
they want a solution that'll work. Now, usually they are fine with solutions that don't work.
Right.
They just want more power.
They just want to.
They're not really about fixing a problem. They just want to control the industry.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to have preferred partners. We are
my
Right.
favorites when they for their plausible deniability they partner with like Southern Poverty Law Center,
Right.
and then they have all these other groups who are Snopes or whatever to fact check. Which
Snopes needs to fact check its own.
yeah, I mean that's what they do, so they can say, well, Snopes said it was a fake article.
Well, you look at Robert Spencer, the SPLC was behind him getting kicked off of Patreon and MasterCard. And I guarantee you, as Harry pointed out, they probably thought it was Richard Spencer, not Robert Spencer. But what the guy talks about, he's a monster if you read SPLC, but if you read his content, he's no fan of Muslim extremists, and so they label him as hate speech.
I love our Somalis.
So, the what's going to happen, and in that Brian Stelter interview, is they started talking about how, we made Jack Dorsey started talking about how we made some mistakes with social proof and showing how many followers have. We incentivized gaining followers. We incentivized likes and retweets. And what they're going to do is remove that stuff, and what that does is that removes the organic growth. And so the only people who will have any kind of significance a Mark Dice, for instance, if you don't know who he is, he's basically an Alex Jones reporter who has like 300,000 followers. That guy would never grow. We would never grow to 8,000-9,000 Twitter followers like we have.
But to me, that's fine. That's better than banning people from the platform.
Sure.
That's better than censoring, because I can still look you up, and I can still personally follow you, and I can still share your stuff.
You just will not. The days of organic growth on these. If we started We Are Libertarians now, we would end up with 100 likes by the end of next year.
Because it would only be people you knew.
Right. The only way to gain any audience on these sites is to have an external platform like this driving people to that, and people go, I want to tag my favorite podcast in this thing about how much I love this show, which everybody does, right? And then they go, or they see it on a website. The reality is that people don't like pages or like Twitter accounts as much as they did 3 years ago. But yeah, the days of organic growth and independent media rising on the back of social media is over.
Bye-bye.
And the media doesn't care, because at the end of the day, the media ultimately wants people to be licensed journalists.
They wanted to destroy that growth.
Right. They want people to come up in the system, and if you want to be a journalist, then you have to go to college, go to journalism school, go work for a small town newspaper, show that you have some writing ability or editorial ability, and rise your way up.
And then you can move to New York and work for Breitbart.
Right, well, or get promoted if you're not a white male. But and so that's how they want you to come up, is because they want to mold you in the form that they have predetermined. They don't want a We Are Libertarians where we don't fit into any mold. So opinion journalism at We Are Libertarians is molded by my personal experiences at many different outlets, many different jobs, many different, strains of thought.
And all your co-hosts and all their different strains of thought.
Exactly right. And they don't want that. They don't want this kind of talk, because
it's free thought.
It's right. It's not part of groupthink. And that is why you have to support independent journalism at patreon.com/WeAreLibertarians.
And that's why you kind of have to support Alex Jones, even if you don't like him. Which is why I'm wearing the hat.
Which is how I feel.
That's how I explain it.
It's they keep bringing up the Sandy Hook thing, for instance.
Yeah.
How many different people on a daily basis are subjects of a news report by a mainstream media outlet or a local news outlet, and their lives are ruined, or I have personally been misquoted half a dozen times. I was made to look like an absolute idiot by Jim Shella at Wish TV in 2010, to the point that it was called getting shelled in the local Libertarian Party. And so...
But that was hundreds and thousands of episodes ago that it happened.
Right.
And he'd been interviewed on mainstream media about it already, and there wasn't any backlash then.
That's right.
I mean... It all just came all of a sudden,
right?
While Trump's president.
So as abhorrent as what I don't know what he's ever said about Sandy Hook families. All I know is that he harassed Sandy Hook families. But do you, dear listener, know what he actually said about Sandy Hook or Sandy Hook families? Because I don't. So that's why
it was a false flag.
I think
attack.
he said they were fake.
Yeah, he said it was fake, and some of the families were lying about their lost people, and they weren't.
I think he
dead.
was saying they were actors, because there's
He
one
said the
one
same thing about
YouTube
other
video of
shootings.
the dude who's like laughing and shit, and then all of a sudden they put the cameras on, and he starts like
some David
mustering
Hogg
up
stuff
tears.
where the guy looks like an actor.
I saw one video where there's like circles.
Daisy Chan, not
Daisy Chan.
He goes by Daisy Chan now.
But ultimately, if he slandered or libeled them, then he should be sued, and he's being sued. So that's the consequence of it.
Yeah,
and he'll pay the lawsuit.
There's already means to, if something. This is my whole thing with the world where we're going to. All right, if you're sexually harassed and you don't go to the police, file a police report, whatever, and you go to Twitter and then, somebody's sexually harassing me, whatever. That's not the right way to do something. You don't just call for someone's free speech to be banned because they said something you don't like, or try to whatever. There's means of doing this shit and trying to take someone down legally and lawfully,
right?
Not just flash mob. Oh, we gotta take away your way of your income. Yeah. Well, you can't talk because you said something out of context.
You look at the situation here in Indianapolis.
Oh God,
the Indianapolis Colts radio announcer. He's 80, and he was asked about his worst moment in history, in his broadcasting history, not his best moment in history, his worst moment, and he recounted a story basically about another local TV reporter who was then a race car driver in 1984, talking about their cars, and basically used a phrase that contained the N-word that was something that meant something else over there, but had a very different connotation because of the N-word here. And he was completely oblivious to it because he had no cultural reference of it. And
it was not on air.
And it was not,
it was like,
I think it was on
no,
air.
it was on air.
It was
and
on
he
air.
corrected him.
I thought he said it was off air.
And the other, it turns out that it wasn't Lamy who actually said it. It was somebody, it was a different reporter, and he immediately corrected him. And Daly says he's never used the word since. I know Daly. I've worked for Daly. He's not a racist in any way, shape, or form. Very nice guy. And so Lamy, in recounting the story, used the actual word in front of a young African-American female employee for a local radio company, and ended up getting an HR complaint filed against him. And it's like, why'd you use the word? Like, what were you just not thinking because you're 80?
You didn't use the word just then when you're talking about the story.
Because that's the right, like...
I don't know how he messed that up, but...
It's like...
Either way.
Exactly. But... So I understand the Colts' actions of letting him go for that, but when Wish TV let Derek Daly go for using a word 34 years ago without cultural context, it's like, in both of these cases, it's like, what's the line here, okay? So for me, is it an abuse of power? Is somebody using their power to manipulate a situation? Well, that's a problem. Is intent? Is there an intent to demean someone, to make them have an emotional reaction? That's obviously actionable. At the end of the day, every company has a right to say this is inappropriate. But I do think that if we're going to start firing people for things they said 35 years ago when they didn't know any better, like, don't go back to our high school days. I mean, how many times...
I can't wait till my Xbox Live transcripts come out in 24 years.
Right.
It's going to be awesome.
So, I don't know, it's...
Oh, no. I miss the days of the internet like that. Everyone had a code name, even on Yahoo Messenger.
Right.
Well, that's kind of when the internet started going to shit, was when normies were able to get online without having to get, like, build a computer or modem or whatever.
You didn't have to worry about what you say.
Yeah.
You could just say what you thought.
All right.
That's why that's when it was beautiful.
Let's continue with Wyden and see what piece of garbage he has to say.
He's still talking.
I've been disappointed in is how...
So, we asked, what would you say if you were senator, to that question? He's disappointed in these companies.
How long it took and how they really are not looking at fleshing out a policy. What's hard in this area is, tech is so dominant in our life that it is sort of the ultimate in kind of ad hoc policy making. Something goes on Tuesday. Congress folks come back with their policy on Wednesday or Thursday. The history is that's usually not very good. I mean, that's what leads us to SESTA and FOSTA and PIPA and SOPA and all these acronyms that were bad policies. And what I've said to them in the few conversations we've had, because we haven't had many, is what you really want to do is see if you can build around a core set of values.
Yeah, I talked about values.
And that's what I was saying, is that I thought, I very much enjoyed your article where you said, hey, it's not just about a bunch of laws. You can have a crate full of laws if you don't get your values right. And so what I'm going to be trying to do in my legislation is to really lay out what the consequences are when somebody who is a bad actor, somebody who really doesn't meet the decency principles that reflect our values, if that bad actor blows by the bounds of common decency, I think you got to have a way to make sure that stuff is taken down.
So that's a hornet's nest with people like this. The idea of what they take down, who decides. There's a lot of people uncomfortable with tech companies deciding these things.
Let me ask you, what values do you think he's talking about?
I love how she sounds like she's his hospice nurse. It's so great. She's,
The leftist values, and if basically he sounds like he's saying that he wants these companies to adopt their own political philosophies and then enforce them on their platforms.
Right.
And if you disagree with a value or a principle or a policy that this company believes in, then you can't be here.
Right.
I mean, then the Donald is gone off of Reddit because Reddit has multiple times said they don't like that.
Yeah, but
they let them stay there. They let them have their free speech.
Right.
But he's talking about technology. At what point does he say, well, an internet service provider can just ban an entire website or whatever? Each company. I mean,
sure.
You got to look at where this is going. It's not just some random person on Facebook.
And what services are we talking about? Are we talking about specifically Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and that's it?
Sounds like he's talking about everything.
Or are we talking about
he says technology.
WordPress.org?
Patreon, WordPress,
which is 28% of the world. Like, where does this end?
If you can put your free speech out on WordPress, then yes, they need to have a list of values and principles.
At what point does one of these CEOs grow some balls and say, listen, you don't have to fucking be on our platform if you don't like what somebody else says. Get off the goddamn internet.
That's basically what Dorsey
said. And go the fuck outside.
But see, that's basically what Dorsey said on Brian Stetler's show. But he's such a weak presenter.
Well, he's got a nose ring.
He's got a nose ring. I was gonna.
He thinks he's fucking Tupac.
I didn't want to call him a cuck, but he's just a tech guy. He talks like this, and so he's very so and you want to invest in meme stocks. Sell your boomer stocks right now and invest in the memes making fun of Silicon Valley beta males. Like that's the next hot commodity.
The real issue with this is they are giving in to a small minority of super vocal people.
Right.
And they're being pressured to by the news media for whatever reason. I think it's because the news media is trying to gain favor on these platforms because they realize that's going to be their new outlets to broadcast.
Well, that was the whole premise of the last show, which is basically
I don't listen.
It's like here's what Alex Jones said. Here's how these journalists, quote unquote, lied about Alex Jones in an effort to beat up a CEO and ask him leading questions he can't give an answer to.
Yeah, that interview was
other than I agree with you.
Yeah.
So you have to ask like what values, because Senator Ron Wyden does not share our values on most things.
I think they do already by
says he's a libertarian.
Do what?
He's libertarian.
Who said that?
There was an article I read about him.
Only on privacy.
Downgrading them. I think they're already doing a version of that. They're already making decisions. Why do you think they're resistant to it? I know they're resistant to being called media companies. I think that's precisely what they are.
I don't know, because the Senator Mark Warner plan basically says the transparency means they have to give over every piece of code that they have built, and their competitors would then see that. They'd basically be nationalized in many ways.
And copied by other countries.
Exactly.
China steals our intellectual data like that all the time. You made something like that public?
Right.
I mean, gosh.
They're monopolies.
Yeah, individually odd monopolies, too, because
they're not monopolies.
So many of them.
There's so many monopolies that doesn't even make sense. There cannot be many monopolies in a market. If monopoly means one.
If we get banned off of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, there's alternatives. They're just not as powerful. They're not there. If you're on DTube versus YouTube, there's no comparison in terms of the audience that is on these platforms. But you still have an ability to post video to an audience.
I wish I could get a cheeseburger at more than Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's and White Castle, those damn monopolies.
Right.
People that were innovators at the beginning and trying to give consumers a fair shake now seem to be interested in monetizing at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way,
what a commie statement is that these companies who are trying to make profit.
Actually, he's full of shit, because YouTube doesn't make any fucking money.
That's true.
And Twitter doesn't make any goddamn money.
Right.
Facebook only makes money because they sell your goddamn data.
Right.
Like, what is he talking about?
All these tech companies show no profit, but the idea that he's offended that these companies, that Mark Zuckerberg built something.
Oh, geez, God forbid you make $1.
Into billions of users, he's pissed.
It used to be celebrated in this country when someone was successful.
Exactly.
if we were talking about
didn't build that,
really
Mark.
horrible pornography, I think they would have moved pretty quickly,
Right.
to deal with it. And I think it's also worth noting
he been on the
that
internet?
with respect to Alex
think
Jones,
he
there are
has.
probably 1,000 accounts out there that are as bad as Alex Jones.
Right, absolutely.
There are monopolies,
Listen,
and
I want you to
these
hear this
people that were innovators at the beginning and trying to give consumers a fair shake now seem to be interested in monetizing at all costs. So,
Or grow it.
by the way, if we were talking about really horrible pornography, I think they would have moved pretty quickly,
Right.
to deal with it.
What is it?
And I think it's also worth noting that with respect to Alex Jones, there are probably 1,000 accounts out there that are as bad as Alex Jones.
Right.
WeAreLibertarians.com is what he's talking about.
So he's literally talking about banning people off of these
Off of the internet.
off the internet because of their political speech, not
Right.
because of a statement about Sandy Hook. That's not what
Right.
this is about. It's that we do not agree with what you do politically.
And he said if it was pornography, it would have been taken down quickly.
There's
I have yet to see. Actually, all my Republican porn I used to watch has been taken off YouPorn.
Number one place for child porn on the internet is Twitter.
I know.
and
Period.
how about YouTube Kids?
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely, Elsagate.
What was that?
Oh, God.
man.
Here we go. Fire up the 4chan.
Elsagate, like as in the Frozen?
Yeah, there was a bunch of Frozen videos. This was
It's
what
part of
last
Alex
year.
Jones's left-wing pedophile conspiracy.
Okay.
Basically,
But they leave these videos up. They make them mad. You don't
Who's
remember all
they?
I mean,
the content creators who's ever making them. I think they traced it back to like Korea. Or
I mean,
something.
yeah,
Like,
they're not.
It's just
you can't
they're
find
just
out.
random weird
It's-
videos, and they're all like babies, like cartoons of like babies getting like beheaded and then shit,
Oh,
and,
shit.
like getting fucked and
Yeah,
like just
things
cartoon like cartoon
very
wise,
inappropriate for
super
children.
fucked up shit. Like you watch and you're like, what? the hell
inappropriate
is
for
this?
adults,
Right.
and it's
it-
on only on YouTube Kids.
And it doesn't make
So
any
you
sense.
don't ever go on YouTube Kids. You just put it on YouTube Kids and hand it to your kid.
But
and
they
trust
name-
that everything on there is safe. For
The
them.
Elsa Gate came from they were naming these videos like Elsa sings or something. I don't know anything about Frozen. I don't have kids.
Right.
I've never seen it.
They're basically
But
newsjacking is what
they're using keywords for whatever's hot at the moment.
Right.
The kids would be searching for, so their videos would then get into the feeds, the auto plays, because the kids
And
kids
they'll
don't
use
know.
their
They're just
popular characters
they
that they
keep
know
coming
and
through.
love.
And but
So
they
this
would,
is
they
not
had
a conspiracy. This is actually on the platform.
oh yeah, this was a huge ordeal. Like
It's still going on right now.
yeah,
The-
they've done
cons-
nothing about it.
The conspiracy is that YouTube doesn't do anything about it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
and
they
then
allow it and they know it's there and they're not doing it.
and then there's also there's also like dressing kids up like transsexuals or whatever, and then these
Teach
old
them-
guys go on there and they start
Mhm,
posting
messing with
comments
them
on it
and-
like
Yikes.
yeah, it's super fucked
Yep.
up.
It's
and they don't do anything about it.
really bad.
Yeah, if you're a
Like,
parent,
it's
man.
almost scary.
Yeah, if you're a parent, you better make sure you race to that.
Yeah,
to
because
that
you
app.
would
because you
never
would
let
think
my kids use
YouTube.
it.
Oh yeah, YouTube. What's YouTube? But then
Right.
there's certain deep holes you can go down on YouTube that are just like
What kind of monster would like post that on YouTube Kids? Like, what a fucked up.
I don't know.
But
Chris
this
Hansen, have a
stuff
seat
is
right over
still
here.
on YouTube
yeah.
Kids right now.
No, I have a friend who basically their kid had this. They were like they downloaded it. Like it's so. I know it exists on there. It's been a huge conversation around YouTube, and as a problem. But my God,
It's kind of like
but they-
the old school days when they had the chat rooms of like AIM or whatever. The old, I guess it was America Online or whatever. But
right? And
AOL
the
chat
problem
rooms.
the problem with this is that it has in terms of libertarian principles, it violates the NAP because when you show a child or someone underage any kind of pornography, you activate certain parts of their brain that are not supposed to be activated until they are mature enough. They go through
After puberty.
Exactly right. And so it is a physical harm that is done to the child by this. And so it's not a matter of
and it's manipulative and
some people who argue for regulation of speech say, well, what about pornography? That's not community standards. Like, well, but that's different because in this particular instance, this has a very real physical effect on children. And
there's also
you can,
guidelines that porn companies have to follow, where you have to, you
There
have
are-
to click on 18. They hold the records, and they can be held accountable for that.
right.
But YouTube cannot be held accountable because it's not.
Someone
They're just hosting the content. They're not the creators.
Exactly right. So even with I'm a free speech absolutist, but there are some things where you can't lie, you can't defraud, you can't defame, you can't do things that, it gets gray when you start saying the truth. Like Joshua Smith had a very strong reaction, let me say, to my segment last episode, and I told the truth. I told the facts as I saw it or as I had heard it, and he called me a liar. It's like, I'm not lying. If I got information wrong, then please enlighten me. But as far as I know, I'm telling the truth about what's going on in the LNC. But from his perspective, I have bad intentions. I'm defaming him when I'm not. And so when
the truth doesn't suit your cause, it's not the truth.
Even if you were wrong, right. Even if you were wrong, it's kind of like Alex Jones in the Sandy Hook thing.
You have to prove intent.
He was just reading the conspiracy that someone else made.
Right.
Alex Jones didn't make the conspiracy.
And he was questioning it, playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point do you?
Yeah.
So you're not allowed to question these things now because
you can't
might
even talk about it.
Well, that's what you always were talking about, Gault. Is like, what is wrong with talking about a conspiracy theory? At the end of the day, you should be allowed to openly question anything and everything, because if you don't, and you use the smear of conspiracy theorist, then eventually that gets turned to me all the time.
Bigger and bigger net that casts on people.
Keep
adding more and more people to it.
Yeah, the last month as people have called me a conspiracy theorist because I'm standing up for Alex Jones, it's like, it doesn't even bother me. What am I going to do? Like, I believe that the guy has a right to say whatever things he wants to say, and political speech is protected. And if you want to straw man me and call me a conspiracy theorist, then go ahead. I've learned that it doesn't matter if you're in the public eye and you're using your voice, or even just in regular life and you talk to 10 people a year. People are going to have. I used to watch at the state fair in 2012. We had Rupert Boneham come out and he shook 7,000 hands.
Yeah, I was there.
You were there.
Oh, it was great.
And there is not one bad bone in Rupert Boneham in his entire body. Sweetest human being I've ever met.
He earned 7,000 votes that day.
Yep. And I would watch people turn around. I watched him as he hugged every person, made every person feel like $1 million. And as I would exit them out of the booth, I'd hear them go, "What a fucking asshole. What a dick. Oh, he was so rude." And I knew for a fact that Rupert doesn't have it in him to evoke that reaction.
They said that about him?
Yes, absolutely. And it wasn't a lot of people, but it was enough that I went, wow, if people think Rupert Boneham is a dick,
they should meet Richard Hatch.
Right, exactly.
That's a deep pull there.
I've never thought that about him one time.
Never. He doesn't have it in him. He's the sweetest man alive.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I've ever thought about him, is that he's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
But they acted like they were meeting Johnny Fairplay.
Wow.
And so
it must just be because of his demeanor and his face and his look, but
working around,
he doesn't even sound angry or mean.
No.
He always sounds energetic and happy and excited.
Exactly. Working around
I don't get that.
Working
Were
around
you sure they weren't talking about you?
Yeah, exactly. Working around high profile people, I have learned that people want inside knowledge. And so if they can't they want to go and tell their friends that they have some secret knowledge that this person is a dick. And so it makes them look cool and special because they know something.
I met Rupert, he's a dick.
Right, exactly.
Oh, really? He's a dick? And then they're cool.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, And so people will believe whatever they want to believe about you, and you have to just be okay with that. And it's just, you have to stand up for your principles. At the end of the day, if I am standing up for Alex Jones and saying deplatforming is wrong and Senator Wyden is wrong, and I don't agree with regulating freedom of speech, and posting these videos and having these conversations gets We Are Libertarians deplatformed, and I lose my ability to talk to you, and I lose the ability to turn this into a full-time gig, then so be it. I'd rather be a nobody with my principles than somebody on CNN just spouting the line. I mean, I'd rather be me and believe what I believe and say what I believe than be Phil Mudd. Good old Phil Mudd, Dad.
Oh,
tell us about.
Well, I'm like Phil. I'd sell my soul for a couple dollars if anybody out there wants to buy Tad Western off.
So I think if you want,
Tad's name is Mudd.
Before we move on to Phil Mudd and the true character of the CIA, I want to thank Josh Sexton. He sent me 4 beautiful glasses that are etched with our logo.
Those are badass.
And funny sayings. You can see them in the We Are Libertarians group, which you can access at wearelibertarians.com. He wrote me a letter. The birthday of dear leaders should be a national holiday.
Cheers to that.
I hope you had a great day. Here are some tools to keep those silky pipes hydrated. Thank you for being generous and thorough. Just wanted to remind you that the audience appreciates everything you do for the show, dear leader. Love, Joshua Sexton. And so thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. My birthday is September 9th. We're going to have a birthday party September 15th out at Jeremiah, the Boss Hogs compound. Are you guys coming?
Yeah, I'll be there. I should be there. I don't know why I wouldn't be.
Gault?
No, I won't be there.
Unless I'm in prison for hate speech.
I don't have my calendar with me, but there is something I am doing that day where I won't be here. That's the only reason, because I already went on the event, and I was like about to put going, and I looked, and there's something I'm doing, and I can't remember what it is, or I don't want to tell everyone, but bullshit. I can't go. Sorry.
I think you know what's required.
A public apology.
That's right.
I'm sorry that I cannot make it to your birthday party, Spangle.
I want the reason in writing, and it better be good enough. People like Stone are traveling from Georgia for this.
Stone's not even a real
I'll
human.
give it to you in writing, but you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
All right.
I swear he's a bot.
So thanks, Joshua.
Who's a bot? Stone?
Yeah. He's our Russian bot. He posts to our Instagram and our Facebook.
Yeah.
Stone is such a sweet boy. I love Stone. Here's how much of a degenerate group that we have on our Facebook group. The conscience of the Facebook group is a 20-year-old Georgian boy. Like he's I always go, Stone, should I say this? And he's like, absolutely not.
That's why your ratings have tanked.
So Phil Mudd is a former CIA employee, and he is a former FBI official. And
counterterrorism.
Yeah, and so
Kills people.
He is a CNN contributor, and he hates Donald Trump. And so he got into a conversation with Paris Denard, and weirdly, after fighting with the CIA agent, Paris Denard had some previous history pop up where he made a masturbation gesture at the college he worked for and got fired. So isn't it weird that all of a sudden you mess with the CIA and you're gone?
Yeah.
So here's, I just want to break this down because I really think what this shows you the kind of person that works for the CIA and how they treat people in your name.
A lot of these people that have these security clearances, and this is the secret in the swampy Washington.
This is Paris talking.
D.C. They have them and they keep them because it's profitable for them after they leave government. Because if you have a security clearance, especially high-level security clearances, your contracts and your consulting gigs pay you a lot more money because of the access that you have. I hope the president continues to do this, and I hope he adds Omarosa to the list, because if she has a clearance, she too, because of her actions, should have it revoked.
Paris is arguing that people should have their security clearances revoked because it's unnecessary. And if you know anything about the security system in the United States, I've read in various places it's like 1.5 million top secret security clearances. So
and you have to be read out too if you're not.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I just read it. I believe you have to be with an active member when you look at something top secret.
Okay, gotcha.
Your security clearance. It's not just like you can walk in and get whatever the shit you want. You got
to be escorted.
Yeah, you have to be.
But you're going to know a friend in there.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
I think it's pretty much a checks and balance system.
Yeah, like the idea that you have the former CIA director having a security clearance makes sense, because if you have something that is time sensitive, then you don't need to go through the rigmarole of having a judge or somebody declare him eligible to look at the information or have a conversation about it.
It's also specialization too. I mean, there's so many. I mean, how much? Well, that's a whole other episode we can get into about foreign spying and everything else. But
so the problem is that someone like John Brennan has a very distinct point of view and does use his security clearances to make big money based on his experiences. But hey, I'd probably do the same thing. So Paris Denard is talking about how he shouldn't have that, and instead of making a reasonable, intelligent point, here's what Phil Mudd says.
I don't know if I'd put Omarosa in the same category of the 75 people who signed those letters, but Phil Mudd, I imagine you want to react.
Profitable, Paris. When I am requested to sit on an advisory board, let me ask you one question. How much do you think I'm paid to do that at the request of the U.S. government? Give me one answer, and you got 10 seconds. How much?
Okay, so you have a hood over your head, and you're in Abu Ghraib, and that's how you're talked to, apparently.
Is Vince McMahon going to pop out?
I'll ask you a question. How much are you paid for your
Answer the
consulting
question.
contracting gig for being a
I have no
former
contracts
official?
with the U.S. government that pay money.
I'm not talking.
Zero.
And this is the thing.
When
I'm not talking.
I would be willing to bet that's a lie.
But he notice he repeats this several times. He's very specific about who he doesn't have contracts.
I know,
with. But I guarantee you, he has contracts with CNN, obviously, which is what Paris never points out. But so here we
When
go.
I'm asked to offer advice to the U.S. government, I
let's
get
be
paid
honest.
zero.
Phil, let's be
That's
honest.
it.
I'm not talking about your role with the federal government. I'm talking about the
who are you
contracting
talking about?
gigs that
You
you
talking
get
about
from
General
being a
Hayden?
consultant and a contractor. The consulting firms that they form and that you all get is because you get more money when having a for having the security clearance.
That is
Stop acting like that doesn't happen.
I have
That's the
zero
truth.
consulting relationships with the U.S. government. Zero.
I'm not talking, Phil, that's a good talking point. I'm not talking about relationships with the government. I'm talking about in the private sector. When you have a security
I
clearance
have
and you
zero
keep it.
relationships with the private sector that involve my security clearance. Zero. I get $0 from
No, you're on CNN because of your security clearance and your expertise, quote unquote.
consulting companies that deal with the U.S. government. Are we clear?
Well, I will be clear in saying that everybody in Washington, D.C. knows if you don't want to be honest about it, that's on you. But if you have a security clearance and you keep it, you
We're
get
done,
more
Jim.
money to
We're
have
done. Get out.
Get out.
Phil,
You can't
Get off my lawn.
You don't get to
Did he kick himself off the?
That's literally like that's literally like you and Tad get into a fight right now, and you can't
Get off the show, Tad.
right. Like
Get out of here. You can't say that.
and I look at you and I go, "No, you get out."
No.
Which
Get out of here, Tad.
That's how I yell at my dog when he tries coming inside when I'm sweeping my floors.
I'm having flashbacks to 2013 where you told Creighton to get out and I told you to get out instead.
Get out.
Oh, man.
I'm gonna rewind that because I'm gonna have to pull that as a drop because that's really funny.
knows if you don't want to be honest about it, that's on you. But if you have a security clearance,
And kudos to Denard for like keeping it together because I would have gotten flustered. I don't I do not do well in arguments and confrontation, and he handles it so well.
and you keep it, you
We're
get
done,
more
Jim.
money to
We're
have
done.
it.
Get out.
Phil,
It's not your show, so I'm
25 years
staying
in the
right here.
service and
Not your
Don't be so
show.
defensive about
Get
this.
out.
Don't be so defensive about this. Your voice is still here. You can still do whatever you want.
let's
But the
take a beat.
politicalization of the intelligence community under this administration,
Right.
with the people coming on here every day, tweeting and talking about this administration, you all have made it about politics, not the president.
Let's take a beat here for a second. And Phil, I appreciate your patience because I know it's getting
I
personal
learned
here.
anything from this interview. Phil glows in the dark.
Your patience, he's screaming like a madman. That's the thing about like. I don't like Donald Trump either, but I'm not coming unglued about it. It's the
Well, your livelihood doesn't depend on top
get-
secret shit that you're getting.
Maybe that's a good point because when he threatens the media and he threatens the security services, they get super insecure about it because it violates the norms that they've always. It's just like
It's
we
always
said,
been a good old boys club. And
That's
then
exactly
he just
right.
kind of threw a wrench in there and was like, you know what? You start talking shit, I'm gonna cut you fuckers off.
people don't like change. They don't like the rules changing.
They sure don't.
And-
And that's had a solid status quo since JFK.
I've had several.
No one challenges them.
I've had several conversations with people about this thing that's happening here locally. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, there is no too careful. You can't be too careful. A guy just got fired for something he said 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Without any context. There's no investigation. Like, if you're doing any form of pretty much anything, but if you're doing any form of comedy, if you're doing any form of media, any form of reporting, any form of posting on social media, your time's coming.
You better be self-employed
You better have several streams of income.
and a pirate ship.
Right.
They're really setting them up, too, for the next election.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the ads are going to be like, all these people shut down and fired because of sexual harassment, yet your president still stands.
Yeah.
And that'll be the ad. I mean, they're going to play it everywhere, billions of dollars from Chinese money. You
Well,
know?
several people have pointed out, and I don't know that it's totally intentional, but several people have pointed out the timing that we're 2 months before an
Oh
election.
yeah, this is all timed.
And so how much more are they going to pull before the 2020 election? They meaning the left and their effort to silence like
They're going balls to the wall.
I talked to a libertarian this week and I was like, you don't understand. Like I was reading through some of the podcast reviews from 2017 and they were like, I love the show because Spangle's a left libertarian. And so like
Commie.
Because you always had to play devil's advocate with Greg.
Yeah, that's part of it.
And
but
he was right.
But it was also that I was anti-Trump.
Yeah.
I was always talking. I always sounded like one of these guys, and I still feel that way. And I still think he's a grotesque, immoral person who is a bad president. He's not good at this. And partially I do like that because he's so incompetent that nothing's getting done. And it's great for ratings. Like I said, 10,000 downloads in a month now. But
huge
episode. You can thank the title.
But
it had Trump's name in it.
I just can't spend my life getting up. Like I can't get my. I can't. It's been 3 years. Like if Donald Trump said the N-word, I'm not even like phased by it anymore. Like I'm desensitized to it. I'll say what's right and what's wrong. But at the end of the day, it's like I just cannot scream on CNN about security clearances and all this stuff. Like you guys have to calm down because what you're going to get is a third term of Donald Trump.
Well, there's no
Yep.
They just keep pushing. It's everything's an outrage, and then literally nothing's an outrage. Like
Right.
nothing should be.
Like the Cohen stuff is serious. Like Donald Trump, or at least Donald Trump's campaign, violated election law. He broke the law. And so as I started out episode 5 of the Chris Spangle show saying, like, there's been a whole lot of nothing burgers for so long that when you finally do have a something burger, it's impossible to have a conversation around it because the right is so aggressive in protecting him.
Yeah, they're
and
going
the
to
left
defend
is
him no matter if they're right or wrong.
and the left is so hell-bent on prosecuting him that there's no rational discussion about whether or not this meets the grounds of high crimes and misdemeanors for impeachment. So there's...
Yeah, you can't even have the conversation now.
At all.
Because you're going to piss someone off.
And it's not...
And then someone's going to get defensive and not think logically anymore and get all emotional.
And it's not
and
even...
that'll happen at every level, not just layman people talking.
Totally.
That'll happen at the top.
And it's not even, like, just, low-level nobodies like us.
Right.
It's people
Hey,
who...
That's what I'm saying.
I have a security clearance, you fuck.
Get out. Get out.
Get out, Spangle.
Get out or I'll punch
Get
you.
out.
Get out! Get out!
You want to
done.
fight?
This is done. No, we've got 3 more minutes in the segment. No, I'm done. It's like Gault screaming, no. Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times. Like, this is a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times appeared on MSNBC on Katie Tur's show, along with Caitlin Huey Burns of Real Clear Politics and John Podhertz of Commentary, which, if you don't listen to the Commentary podcast, very unlibertarian at times, but very
Fake news.
very interesting conversations a lot of the time. And I just want to play this because it just highlights how insane.
Is this the clip that they can't even have a conversation? It's hilarious. This is great.
This New York Times writer or journalist is so out of her mind that they're like, no, like even the MSNBC host, when the MSNBC host thinks you've gone too far with criticizing Trump, you may be a little too far.
I don't even know what this is.
This is the most vocal president, at least in real time, that we've had in recent memory, right? He is the leader of the free world.
Oh, no, he's not. He's not the leader of the free world, but
That's
sorry.
Michelle.
By default, he's the leader of the free world.
Angela Merkel's the leader of the free world, but...
Well, he is the most important person in the world, in politics right now, and he is very vocal. And I do agree with you that this does express a level of exasperation among his aides that they can't have any control over.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Your argument that he's not the leader of the free world because he's not standing up for democracy, he's not standing up for humanitarian rights. He's a sort of junior player in a block of authoritarian countries. And the people like the European Union are no longer looking at him as a leader any longer, and they're thinking of doing the right thing.
They see him as right. They see he's he's part of a bloc that includes Vladimir Putin, Duterte. He's kind of part of he's part of kind of an axis power.
Well, hold on.
It's worse. It's worse than that in a certain way. I mean, not that that's not the worst thing you could have said, because it's about the worst thing you could say about him. But if he's not the leader,
rounding people up and murdering them without any due process.
He'd certainly like to.
Well, anyway,
I don't think you can say that definitively.
I do.
He certainly like to. I mean,
what was this conversation even about?
I don't know. It's so bizarre that.
And they wonder why nobody listens to him. They listen to Alex Jones.
Do you think that Donald Trump wants to round people up and murder them?
She said so, obviously.
I do think that Trump has authoritarian impulses. There's no doubt about it that he's a demagogue and he divides people and pits people against each other in an effort to maintain his power. Like the kneeling thing, for instance, making the kneeling thing, turning it from, black oppression under the thumb of police officers into do you support the troops and the flag is a perfect example of authoritarianism at work and propagandizing. But at the end of the day, we're not in a fascist regime. He's not a dictator. When court orders, for instance, in his signature policy of the Muslim ban, quote unquote, it gets struck down and he can't enforce it, he doesn't enforce it. No. A dictator would roll the military into ISIS headquarters and say, we're in charge now. Like, it's so beyond the pale of common sense and reality that they're building a straw man that is just so far removed. And so people just go, all right, I know he's crazy, but he's the crazy I know. And you people with your Antifas and your crazy talk are not a good alternative.
To me, it sounded like they were trying to set him up where he shouldn't be able to tweet or talk out.
Right.
Like that his aides can't get control of him because
Right.
he's spouting off. So we should. That's what it sounded like to me. I don't know what the context of this clip was, but it was kind of seemed like they don't want him speaking out. She's like, well, he's speaking out. He's crazy.
Right.
I think is the point that she was trying to get at, wasn't it?
The article doesn't claim what the context of what the segment was about, but
I think it falls into that free speech, the whole we got to ban people we don't like.
Yeah.
I think they'll try to censor him on Twitter.
Did you see how much he's worth to Twitter according to one study?
98% of it.
How much? If you were to guess the market cap that Donald Trump brings to Twitter, what would you guess?
Oh shit! Let's see.
10%.
Or are we talking?
Give me a dollar. Give me a dollar for it.
Oh, money?
Yeah, thousands, millions, billions, trillions.
Well, anything he tweets automatically becomes news over every network. So
Right.
is that what they're figuring in?
Yeah, basically the advertisement.
Oh, $10 billion. I don't know.
Okay, what do you think, Gault?
$10 billion?
Yeah. His tweets are national
what's
news.
Twitter worth?
No, not Twitter. You're talking about
his tweets
value
worth.
to Twitter.
Well, Jack Dorsey alone is worth $5 billion.
Yeah,
So the thing about these social companies is there's a huge bubble building.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
for sure.
when you have Tesla as much as Tesla makes no profit, and it's got the same value cap as
Not anymore.
GM, which has $8 billion in profit.
They're about to go private because they can't handle the market.
Yeah.
changing their money all the time.
Yeah. All right. Donald Trump is worth, according to some valuations, $2 billion.
That's a low estimate. I'm way bigger. I believe
There's
it.
no one bigger than me.
James Woods was right behind him at like $1 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. I gotta pee. You
I
two
think
either
you're worth a couple $100,000, right?
easily.
Yeah.
I gotta pee. So you two either talk amongst yourselves, and I'll.
Well, how many Twitter
I'll
followers does
edit.
Donald Trump have? Like
So while he's
80
in there,
million?
how much can we sell all this gear for? How much do you
know.
think he's worth?
I've looked.
I don't know. Are we liquidating?
He's been to the pawn shop. How much has he been earning?
He's like everybody's
He's
been
like,
getting
oh.
whacked for their political speech, so I gotta start figuring out how much this board's worth.
Since
over
I
here.
had that big episode.
I know.
Everything's went down, so I got to go to the pawn shop now.
Shit's hit the fan. We're not allowed to talk. There's silence in this.
So what else?
I don't know. I
guess
think
we're
that
changing
clip.
subjects, and he left us hanging.
No, that clip. What the hell did you think about that clip? I didn't understand a word they were talking about. It just seemed like
A bunch of
Trump derangement syndrome.
talking
is what it sounded
heads
like to me.
yelling at each other.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't watch the news.
Anything you can say that is negative about Donald Trump, it doesn't matter. You just need to spout negative stuff about him, even if it's ignorant and you're not thinking about it. And saying that he's not the leader of free world is just to snip at people and just to get reactions out of people.
Do people actually
that's what people
believe
watch.
that?
That gets them viewers saying stuff like that. It does.
I don't know.
Not as many as Alex Jones gets.
No, I know,
but
right? You should
saying
talk about
frogs
gay
are
frogs
and-
more often.
and saying people are lizards, but I mean, and he has way more views than CNN.
That's right.
And they don't talk about lizard people.
Really sick stuff, man.
The CNN interviewed David Icke. Do you think people would quit watching CNN?
No, hell no. The rains go through the roof. Remember Alex Jones went on Piers Morgan and tore him a new asshole, and that's when he That was like their highest rated episode ever.
Thank you. I was either going to have to end it or what, but I was just dying. Stereo.
You've only drank like 2 gallons of water. It's all right.
Let's see here.
Me and Gault held it down.
Videos, Alex Jones. The Alex Jones Stereo Deluxe.
The Bon Iver song.
The Bon Iver, yeah,
that's the greatest song ever.
It's so catchy. It gets in your head.
I'm surprised they haven't pulled it for you, too.
I've had enough of these people.
And so they take his words, they turn it into a song, and they intersperse the clips. I'll put it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, you have to watch the video.
Christian murderers, scum, they're on giant death factories, keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. All you need to know about these people, I go out and face these scum.
You know every word, Tad.
Yeah,
There's
no,
so
I just
much.
watched it last night.
That's why Alex Jones is great. He's
Every
one of
night
the
before-
best memes on the internet. We can't lose him.
Every night before I go to bed, I watch a honorary Alex Jones clip since he's been banned.
You should watch all the Overwatch characters as Alex Jones.
I guess the Owen Troyer, his sidekick, he hosts a show called War Room on InfoWars. They not only got their YouTube channel pulled today, they had the entire. He's no longer allowed to use Google products, so his Gmail's gone.
Who?
Owen Troyer. He hosts the War Room show with Roger Stone.
Roger, the dude.
He's the young guy that was.
He got real famous during the Trump campaign because he was going around in like St. Louis. I think it was in St. Louis where he got famous.
They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin, and they run around screaming, "We love Satan, we wanna eat babies." I have them on video. Hillary's in the creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy, weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur.
Let me see if this is the clip for today. It's killing me.
Oh, it's that.
You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. Here.
You know, if Apple wanted to remove him, they should have done it on the grounds of playing copyrighted music. And then there wouldn't have, podcasters would have not played. You're not allowed to play any copyrighted music. Like, technically playing these clips are illegal according to copyright law because of downloads.
I imagine in the near future, you won't be censored. You'll still have your episodes up, but all your ones with Alex Jones will get blocked.
Even
from many of the platforms.
Even if he's broadcasting,
if his name is in your titles or your description, it'll probably get taken down.
Us taking the Recode clip and commenting on it still, and that little segment right there, I could be sued by the record company.
Even if you're, even if you broadcast live with the same thing.
Yep.
Just because it's podcast.
Yep, because it's a download, has to be scrubbed. The laws are so incredibly narrow. The only thing that you're really technically allowed to play on a podcast is your voice and music that you own the rights to.
A good thing I own all my music on TED Talk.
Right. So.
Is that clear?
Is that clear? Couldn't have timed it better if I wanted to.
No, you couldn't have.
Radio edit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Stelter. And
Brian Stelter is the host of Reliable Sources on CNN. He's the one with the big, fat, fleshy face.
I decide who and who can't go on the internet now. Is that clear? I just got Owen Troyer taken off his YouTube channel.
And like they have a picture of him, and it's like his mouth is moving like the old Conan clips.
The good folks at Media Matters funded by George Soros. They've been going around saying no one can have Alex Jones on now. That's not authoritarian at all. Mark Dice was pointing out that I only get a few retweets. He gets tens of thousands, and so does Alex Jones. And Owen Schroyer, that's why it needs to be taken down. And I agree. I'm actually Owen Schroyer, who got in a time machine and came back as Brian Stelter. I'm not Anton LaVey, and I'm not Leo Zagami, no. Everything's fine. Actually, I am Anton LaVey from heaven.
Who?
And I was broadcasting down here, but I still lie a little bit. Let's actually go to the real Brian Stelter. Can we put him back on screen? And then I guess let Owen Schroyer talk to him. Go ahead, Owen, go ahead and be Mr. Stelter now.
Well, I just wanted to ask Brian a question. Brian, why do you want to get InfoWars banned so much?
Well, you see, it's not fair that someone like Alex Jones, who is much better looking than me, has a family that loves him, has a whole crew of people that loves him, has friends that care about him, has an audience that will always support him. It's not fair that Alex Jones gets to exist and compete with someone like me, who's ugly, not just physically, but also mentally and spiritually hideous. And a lot of people say I remind them of Pennywise Stelter.
Oh my God.
Who's my uncle. But I just think it's not fair that Alex Jones is allowed to have a platform, and then I'm supposed to compete with that. So you have to be banned, Owen, and you're next too. You got to be banned, and David Knight, and if you guys, and Roger Stone, and Mark Dice, and anyone else who's obviously much better looking than me, has a much higher IQ, they must be banned. This is not fair. I am a journalist. I am a newsman. I am a newsman, damn it.
And by the way,
news must be heard.
Don't criticize me or I'll file bullying complaints. I'm only trying to smother your speech and defaming you and lying and saying you're calling for violence. I'm only engaged in all sorts of horrible things and working with, media matters to ban people. So you have to lay down to me. I deserve, as legacy media, to make you watch me, and it's going to happen.
Oh, you know what's so great about this moment right now, Alex, is that Brian Stelter is actually probably listening and crying.
Well, look,
we should call him Crying Stelter.
Well, the bottom line is this guy has absolutely raped our free speech along with the rest of CNN and that fellow he works with over there at Media Matters. And this is dangerous. And the president...
Oh, man. Hi, Brian. Just cracked me up.
Holy shit. Yeah, he is he's a national treasure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's...
And he's right.
He just and that should, he should just call himself comedy.
Well, like he is Bill Hicks. You realize that, right?
I've seen that, yeah.
Let's not talk about conspiracies on this show now.
He's much funnier than Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks was never
No, he's just Bill Hicks has evolved and gotten funnier.
I think Bill Hicks is one of those comedians that you had to be in that time era. He doesn't work for millennials because you don't get it.
Yeah.
And so I think if you lived in that era, it's like George Carlin, it's timeless. For whatever reason, but he was the same level of cultural critic. Like
Carlin would
very
kill
similar.
himself if he was alive today.
Oh, Carlin!
Could you imagine?
Oh, he'd be
my gosh, he would be the funniest man on the planet right now, though.
Yeah, yeah,
he would be. He would be so funny right now.
Yeah, like Lenny Bruce, I think is terribly unfunny, but I'm sure back in the day he was hysterical and people are influenced by him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, boys, let's start wrapping up. Final thoughts for this episode, Chris Gault.
Oh, do you think the Republican will drop out of the Senate race in New Mexico?
So I've been, there's been a meme going around that he's at 28, that Gary Johnson's at 28% now, when he's only got to get to 33. But as libertarians do, they were henpecking that particular poll in the group.
No, don't say as libertarians do. Say as all polls do.
I'm saying
because every side does that with their polls.
Sure, but I'm saying
I've worked for campaigns on all sides, and they all do it.
What I'm saying is the libertarian people in this and the We Are Libertarians group got a poll favorable to libertarians and immediately started shitting on it and pointing out why it's wrong.
Well, I shat on it.
Republicans point out why this is great.
There's only 500 people,
right? So I
think he's got a hell of a chance.
Yeah, I think if Ron Nielsen doesn't screw this up, and if he screws this up, we should run him out of the party on rails. But I love Gary Johnson, and Ron Nielsen was a very inadequate campaign manager for 2 cycles. And so I'll be very interested to see. I've got people on the inside. I have the documents.
You've seen the documents?
I do. The tentacles of We Are Libertarians.
Fly me out there, man.
In 2020.
Let me take a spot.
Let me tell you, the tentacles of We Are Libertarians are growing, and the inside information that I have in every part of the libertarian movement now, thanks to the growth of this show, I have the documents. They're full of the frickin' frogs gang.
The globalist. You gotta say globalist.
So, Ron Nielsen is a globalist. No, so we'll see. But I will be able to give you some insight into that campaign.
Well, it'd be a big victory for everyone.
It would. Even if
even the right, it would be to take that seat from the left. Even.
Gary Johnson gets 20% in that race, and it's a victory.
Sure.
If he gets more than 10%,
but if he wins,
he's the most powerful man in politics. It's 40,
and the Libertarian Party becomes a force to be reckoned with.
That's right. And you have Mark Rutherford.
You got to earn our vote now.
Mark Rutherford here in Indiana. You've got Larry Sharp in New York. Nick Sarwark, I think, is running a very competitive campaign in Phoenix.
Poor Peterson didn't make it.
Yeah, but
that's all right.
You got to have ground game. So we'll see. It could be a very big year for the Libertarian Party. I had written them off after 2016, but
we've got a lot of local candidates even.
Yeah.
I saw some YAL was backing some Libertarian Party candidates now even.
Really? That's
And when I was in YAL, that never would have happened.
No.
So even they're seeing people that can win. And that's always been their thing it's about liberty-minded candidates that can win.
Right.
And now they're backing libertarians because they can win now. It's our time, people.
Boss Hogg has a real shot at winning.
Yeah.
He and Dakota Davis have a real shot at winning their seats.
I donate to one campaign a year.
Mm-hmm.
That was mine.
Boss Hogg?
Yeah.
Jeremiah Morrill?
Everyone should go on there and donate to him because he can win.
Yes.
He can absolutely win.
Wall needs to support their own. The Boss Hogg boys, Jeremiah Morrill, has a real shot at winning his county council seat, and so make sure you go out there and hit up his page. Can you look up what the donation link is? Or I'll put it in the show notes. So please go out, drive to Indiana and knock on some doors for him if you can. So
I'm talking to you, Stone.
That's right. Tad Western, other final thoughts?
That's me. Final thoughts. I don't know. It's a crazy world we're living in, man.
It's exciting times.
I keep wanting to fire up my microphone, but I think if I do, it'll end me. I say one wrong thing and
Tad,
it'll be bad.
What I want you to do is I want a Tad segment.
I know. I need
once a week, 5 minutes if you can.
No, I can do 5 minutes.
Yeah, you don't.
How about I do 5 minutes a day?
If you did,
I can't do 5 minutes though because I get pissed off and I just start ranting.
If you did, listen, it is not been. I didn't want to do the show today, the Chris Spangle show. The daily commitment of doing a show is a lot.
Yeah.
And today was the first day where I was like, I could just flake on it, and I didn't. I persevered. It took 30 minutes out of my day.
That's my problem. I need somebody on my ass.
Yeah. Well, and so what you learn is like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No, I'm not worried about it being bad. I'm just the motivation to get there, you know.
Right. You just got to do it.
I know.
You got to make yourself do
I got to jump in the pool.
Yep.
Well, Jeremiah, I tried, but Spangle has the worst internet service in the world here.
Why are you on the
and
Wi-Fi?
We probably got.
You don't have good cell service here either, though.
We got deplatformed.
You don't have good anything here. You need to move.
This is the happening. We're getting deplatformed.
Well,
I don't know.
Screw you guys. All right. Final thoughts.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Final thoughts for me. This is exactly what I was talking about when you create an environment where you accept censorship from private companies, you lay the groundwork for the government to start censoring and codifying that into law. And they won't do it if you scream like a banshee and screech your way all the way to Washington and change things. So make sure you do it. Thank you to Craig DaCosta, Jason Doolittle, Christy Avery, Paul Jonathan Eads Jr., the Liberty Coalition for being our $100 a month Patreon subscribers. You can support this program. It is incredibly important now more than ever that you support We Are Libertarians. And we are so thankful that you do, and God bless all those who do, because as this gets more successful, then it costs us more. So
God bless you folks.
And we're able to do more stuff. So very, very good. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
It's been so nice having you two.
Next week.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Get out, Tad.
All right.
Oh!